In the middle of the war, we had ourselves a merry Christmas.
All Is Calm is a piece of music theater about the Christmas truce of World War I. And it's told through actual accounts from a variety of sources and songs of the period. But it's a musical telling of the remarkable truce that happened the first year of the war.
The soldiers stopped fighting along the front and celebrated Christmas together across enemy lines.
They shared gifts. They had drinks together. They played football. They took a break from killing each other for a day and saw each other as human beings.
I believe music is why the truce happened. It's what laid the groundwork for the truce. Music is what built trust with the enemy.
And in calm evenings, songs from one line floated to the trenches on the other side and were there received with applause and sometimes calls for an encore. Bravo, Fritz, bravo!
They could hear the other person sing, and night after night they would join in and sing together from the trenches.
The home fire's burning while your hearts are.
So it was music that brought them together.
Though your lands are far away, they dream of home.
The first person I approached about the project was Eric Light. And Eric just completely signed up out of the gate. After 10 minutes of conversation, he said, yes, we want to be a part of this.
Initially, working with Peter, we were just trying to figure out, what is this piece going to be? What does it want to be?
And from 10 p.m. onwards, we are going to give the enemy every conceivable song in harmony, from carols to Tipperary.
We knew singing was such a part of the actual historical Christmas truce that we wanted to have that, but we weren't exactly sure how this was going to fit.
So I bought a plane ticket to Europe and just began my research. And I started in Brussels and moved up to the Western Front to Ypres, or Ypres, and then I went to London and into Germany, into Hamburg and Berlin, Dresden, and thought if I could tell this story entirely in the words of the men who were there at the beginning of the war, who had been promised they would be home by Christmas.
So I thought it would be nice to be with a lot of lads on something of a picnic, because we all thought the war would be over by Christmas. Robert Barnes, 7th Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders.
I thought if I could put all these together in a way and tell the story in their words, it would have much more power than any fictitious characters I would create. I pulled from gravestone inscriptions, old radio broadcasts, journals, letters, and this wide range of sources.
I wish that I were back again in the glens of Donegal. They'll call me a coward if I return, but a hero if I fall. Patrick McGill, London Irish Regiment.
It's really a sacred piece, I would say, and we really take that to heart as we just try to be vessels for the words of the men who were there, who are no longer with us to speak for themselves.
Starlight overhead. Blank stars. I'm wide awake and some chap's dead. Siegfried Sassoon, Royal Welsh Fusiliers.
But I also wanted it to be in the poetry of the time, their songs, their lyrics.
So we kind of created this collection of songs that we thought might end up into the show.
Because I wanted to find a new form for this, that there wasn't really a model I was looking to. There's certainly been docudramas. I wasn't aware of any kind of docu-musicals that were using this found text as their source of primary dialogue. And I thought, oh, what if it were actually a cappella? What if there was no orchestra?
So let's take it from the very first bass. So one is called.
But that's what the singing would have been.
having an a cappella musical offers a lot of opportunities, but with opportunities always come challenges as well.
The amount of focus that it takes to stay in pitch, to keep the blend going with 9 other people, to get the timing right of your speech so that it matches the underscoring underneath, and then to come back in for the fully realized choral moments that we have, and then to quick catch your breath and then sing a solo. You have to be on your toes constantly.
But we've wandered many a weary foot, seen all the lang syne.
There's a directness that happens with just the human voice, and using that human voice as the orchestra in many ways for this show.
Early on, we had decided what moments would be our concert moments, where the narrative could sit for a moment.
So in many ways, we're dealing with a level of reality of singing. But then the goal was, like in most musicals, how do you then take the music and lift the emotional moment? Like the way any opera aria does or any musical number does. But then there's moments where you bring all of those vowels into uniformity, as you would do in good choral music. And I think, at any rate, the piece then lifts in those moments, and the music sort of transcends emotionally what's going on.
True man, yet very God.
During the show, you feel like part of a greater whole.
It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go.
But at the same time, you also feel the pressure to make sure that you're giving the same amount of support, that you're not letting anybody down, because we function as a unit. A big goal for us is to actually sound like a single instrument.
It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there.
And so we have these moments of Will You Go to Flanders or Silent Night, where the arrangements become a lot more sophisticated, far more so than what maybe your average World War I soldier would have been harmonizing to.
Will you go to
Yes. Oh, yeah. In the final verse, you are.
But the piece actually opens with a song that predated World War I. It's an old Celtic song called Will You Go to Flanders? The piece begins with men kind of coming out of the smoke as though their ghosts have arrived, or as they're being pulled up from the ashes. And I wanted it to feel like the men are coming out of the past, whether it's to teach us something or to remind us, but to tell the story.
We knew that Silent Night needed to be the focal point.
Well, it begins with one solitary voice, that story we often hear about the courageous German soldier who put down his rifle and emerged from the trenches singing Stille Nacht. And then others joined in.
Then in the second verse, you hear Silent Night sung in German, French, and English simultaneously in 3 different keys in canon. I ended up writing a coda for the work, and that's when you hear us singing all is calm over and over again. It's a moment of elation. It's also a moment of sadness. And that ends with one large chord and then silence again. And I think in that moment, I always take away from that is maybe music will never be heard again.
I think that's when theater's the best. When we trigger an imagination, that it's still a visceral, can be a beautiful, overwhelming experience, but the audience is responsible for completing the picture, where they have a role to play as well. The production is very spare. I love how just the body and space can tell a story, and how bodies relate to each other can be profound. And so I've tried to create a poetic representation of this remarkable moment.
I learned that all the men played multiple roles, so what became extremely important to the design was sort of creating this neutrality to the uniforms. It really became about creating like a strong line and silhouette for the guys to sort of live in while they're these soldiers telling their story. So black really kind of creates a sense of loss. We're also in mourning for all these people. Kind of what we're seeing on stage are these essences, these ghosts, these specters of these men that all died in this conflict.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true.
The genesis of the lighting design was driven by two very different factors. One is the aesthetic, the emotional content of the piece, and trying to recreate as much as possible the feeling of that vast desolation of no man's land. And then there's the very practical side, which always informs what designers do.
At night, we would be on sentry.
You know, you see stars at times, you'll see the moon appear once in the production, but otherwise it's just a black void. And in a lot of ways, that's a comment on what these men are experiencing emotionally, as well as physically.
Only yards at time separated us.
I had a lice hunt this forenoon, and oh my, I caught thousands.
I coach the actors on their voice and speech and how to sound like they're from somewhere else. So they're switching in and out of the different accents.
Bra Weihnachten, Tommy!
And a happy Christmas to you, Fritz!
But do not eat yourself with the sausages!
Not just for their monologues that pop in and out really quickly, but then for all the music as well.
Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles in der Welt.
This is one of the interesting things about this particular piece, is that you are putting on and taking off characters in a very short period of time.
Friendly intercourse with the enemy, unofficial armistices, and the exchange of tobacco and other comforts, however tempting and occasionally amusing they may be, are absolutely prohibited.
We sit down and work on all the minutia of this vowel and this sound and this consonant for every song.
I want to go.
And so the accents give us this sense of who these people are. They're from very different places or from different classes.
The war ain't so bad if you're wearing a star, but being a private don't get you so far.
So we have those pauses between our vowels. That's the same thing as Silent Night, kind of take in the space, but be in the room with the audience for those vowels.
5 minutes, everyone. We're at 5 minutes, please. 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Tuck them in. Get nice and tight.
All three. We're good. Just for Eden, you're not getting.
So before every single performance, a cast member will bring some sort of a passage as it relates to World War I, or even warfare in general, or its impact on a relative or a friend. The passage reminds us of why we're doing this. It reminds us of the sort of the toll that war can take.
That was not written in 1940. Anyone who wants to can bring a poem or a reading or an article or just some thoughts, observations, share it with the group, and then we'll just sing a couple of simple chords together and just try to lock in the harmonies. And it's sort of really quiet, and we just sort of huddle up. Yeah, it's pretty nice. It's a nice moment.
It aligns us both vocally, mentally, and spiritually too.
Tell the story, boys.
Folk from art. All is calm. Take 3, show 4.
I shall never forget it. It was one of the highlights of my life. Albert Morin of the 2nd Queen's Regiment.
These men are heroes. They're my heroes. And I want their names to be heard. I want their names to be said out loud. I want them to have their rightful place in history.
I have now a very different opinion of the Germans.
It's about brotherhood and humanity, and I feel like the audience truly experiences something, some kind of transformation during this show, and we feel it too in the cast.
Thought this an extraordinary thing. 2 nations both singing the same carol in the middle of a war.
All is Calm is a bit of a meditation on this idea of peace on earth and goodwill toward all.
Hey, Tommy! Come over here! Come over here yourself!
I've been doing musical theater and opera for 30 plus years now, and this is the most important piece I've ever worked on.
They came out of their trenches and walked across unarmed. What for our men to do? Shoot? You could not shoot unarmed men.
They put a human face on the enemy. That's what the story is about, that if you can just get together with these people that are perceived enemies, you might find your common ground, and they will not be enemies anymore.
And 4 words are spoken. We will remember them.
Those heroic soldiers exercised peace. And in that moment, exercising peace took a lot more courage than exercising war.
For a single night, no man's land was every man's land. And we, the lowest of the ranks, achieved what the Pope himself could not. In the middle of the war, we had ourselves a merry Christmas.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.